Hello and welcome to Film Companion South. This is the 20th year of the release of Heram, one of the best films made in India. And I think we should celebrate the film by talking about it. And this Ask PR is about Heram questions. Sharath in 97 says Heram is basically about a disillusioned man fueled by hate slowly setting aside his prejudice and transforming into a liberal Gandhian. Do you think this film has one of the best character arcs in perhaps even the history of world cinema? I think the only character arc film that remotely inches close to Hey Ram is Paul Thomas Anderson's The Master, etc. etc. Okay, so this is how I see the film. I see this film as being very weak in terms of a character arc, okay? And I think that's the genius of the film. And that's an intentional thing because for me, this is a film with two unreliable narrators. And I've never seen this in any film in anywhere in the world, right? You know, we're used to unreliable narrators, of course. So there's usually one guy who says something and we don't know whether we are to believe him or not, and we follow a story, right? This film has two. The first person is the person who begins the story, that is the grandson of Saket Ram. He begins the story and he is a novelist. That means he writes lies for a living. So he himself is an unreliable narrator. The second unreliable narrator, of course, is Saket Ram himself because he has, until a point he's okay, but after Aparna dies, after the Rani Mukerji character dies, he becomes mad, and the madness of the era is reflected through the madness of the man. Mad means not literally mad, of course, but you know what I mean. So the film keeps harping on this unreliable narrator fact because Saket Ram tells Maithili, that is the Vasundhara character, I don't like biography. She catches him reading a biography of Gandhi and he says, I don't like biography. And what did the other person say? The grandson says he likes telling stories in the first person. So we're getting into autobiography, and the novelist's grandson also says that his next novel is going to be based. He's telling this to Abbas at the beginning, who plays the doctor, and he's saying that his next novel, that is the grandson's next novel, is going to be based on this wonderful mix of fiction and biography that his grandfather told him. So, fact and fiction are completely interchangeable in this movie, and that is why I say it does not have a traditional character arc at all. Because Ram lands up in, that is Saket Ram lands up in Maharashtra and he runs into Lalwani, who he last met in Karachi. He goes to the Chandni Chowk area of Delhi and he runs into Shah Rukh Khan. He goes to Gandhi to assassinate him, and there he runs into the father-in-law that he abandoned in Tamil Nadu. And in one of my most favorite scenes in the movie, he hears, as he's setting out to assassinate Gandhi, he hears a paralyzed man speak for the very first time saying that what you're going to do is a sin, or the power, it's a sin, ye paap hai, in the Hindi version. So it's a hallucination for me. For me, it's not a real thing at all. For me, it's a hallucination. He is imagining that that man is telling him that, and that is what that scene is about. So this is the man whose mind is, I'm calling it weak, but not in the traditional sense, because he is not a strong person. He is easily manipulated. He's easily manipulated after the horrific death of his first wife into marrying for a second time. He could have resisted, he could have said that's horrible and stuff like that, but he's just manipulated. And we don't get a great character arc saying, how did this man who loved his wife so much and who watched her die in the most horrible possible manner, how did this man consent after 6 months' time or whatever to marry for the second time? Another great character arc that was needed and is not there in the film is, how did this man just listen to one speech of Sriram Abhyankar and decide that Mahatma Gandhi is the reason for all the evils and therefore decide he's going to assassinate? So that thing about one guy just needing no great thought process to kind of say, oh, is this right or not? Because he's not mentally all there. So we don't have the traditional character arcs in a film that take us from point A to B to C to D to E. We jump straight from A to E. We jump straight from, throughout the movie, we jump straight from A to E. And that's the beauty of this film, that it throws away the traditional construction of character arcs and makes us follow the mental processes of a man who's probably not mentally well, who's probably hallucinating. That's why the whole movie comes across as a kind of hallucination, because we are never sure, like that grandson who's a novelist said, we're never sure which one is fact and which one is fiction. In fact, I would go so far as to say, did Gandhi, was he even present at the site of the assassination? I don't know. Maybe he just imagined that. I don't know. That's the wonderful thing about this movie, that he kind of gives us a story, an alternate story that could have happened but could not have also happened. So that's the beauty of this film. And for me, the fact that he's hallucinating is present right till the time he dies, because the last image of him that he sees is that of the nurse in front of him, because they're being put into that sewage system that's newly being constructed, and that goes back to the first image of a body being lowered in the Harappan civilization, Mohenjo-daro civilization, them being in that pit kind of thing, the excavation site. So it's a mirror kind of image. And the last image that he sees is that of the nurse. And the nurse has a mole on her cheek, like Shah Rukh Khan's wife had, who was Nafisa, and she tied a Rakhi to Saket Ram, and she was his sister. So did the nurse really have a mole, or is he imagining Nafisa as the nurse? Now that nurse then transforms, she morphs into Maithili. So he still is hallucinating. He is never sure what is fact, what is fiction. The fact that in the present day, in black and white, the Babri Masjid day riots are taking place above, that takes him back to the shooting range, which again is a hallucinatory shooting range, because he is shooting alone in the midst of this fever dream landscape, and there's a tornado coming, and he's kind of standing up to it, and it whips past him, and the whole movie is this beautiful tornado that's whipping across this man's mind. And I think that's what's so beautiful about it. So long answer to a short question is that I think it's a great film, but not because it has the best character arcs, but because it kind of dispenses with the traditional notions of what a character arc is. And I think that's what's so fantastic about this film. Dadi Karanas, not really a question. Can you point out a few Kamalisms from Heram for us, please? My God, few. The film is filled with Kamalisms. It's like every time I see this film, I notice something that you probably didn't before. Like, let's begin with the Ramayana references, right? So his name is Saket Ram, and Saket is an older name for Ayodhya. So he's literally Ayodhya ka Ram, and Gandhi calls him Dakshin ka Ram. So that Ram thing is spread throughout the country, like north and south. And he's married to Maithili, which is the name of Sita, and he calls Shah Rukh Khan, when they are cornered by the Hindu mob, he calls Shah Rukh Khan Bharat, who's again Ram's brother, and this time it's a Muslim. And the Saket Ram is paired with another Ram, which is Sri Ram Abhyankar. That the two Rams are kind of opposing poles, right? This man says, "What can I do?" After the Calcutta riots, when the two Rams meet, this guy says, "What can I do? I'm just a civilian," and that guy says, "This is a civil war, so you've got to fight as well." So the two Rams are kind of first in opposition, and then they kind of unite in purpose. And this again goes back to what I said earlier, because why would Abhyankar suddenly see this man who's practically wandering around like a madman and say, "Oh wow, this guy is a great guy to induct into our cause. Wow, he doesn't know anything about RSS or ideology, but let's just randomly take him and introduce him to a Maharaja, and let's make him one of our, induct him into this whole core philosophy without any kind of background." That's why I'm saying this film is not filled with traditional character arcs at all. We don't know how much of this is really happening inside his head, or how much of this is being knit together as a fiction by Saket Ram's grandson, for the novel that he's writing. Nobody knows. And one of my favorite Kamalisms in this movie is how the title is repeated by so many people except Gandhi, whose "Hey Ram" was supposed to be his last words, right? But except Gandhi, everybody else says "Hey Ram." When Gandhi dies, we don't hear him say "Hey Ram" because we see a different point of view. But Rani Mukerji says it, "Hey Ram," she calls out. Vasanta Ate, when she dies, she kind of says "Hey Ram." When Shah Rukh Khan, when he meets Kamal again in Delhi after a very long time, he says "Hey Ram." So the title is being called out again and again by everybody except the man who's most famously associated with those two words. And then let's look at another Kamalism, right? The Gandhi references, which is in the very first scene again. See, the first scene is very, very important. It's not just a random setup scene where we see this guy's skull morph into this old man's skull morph into a skull in Mohenjo-daro, and that's when the movie starts. No. I think the movie starts in the very first scene, in the black and white dialogue between Saket Ram's grandson and the doctor played by Abbas. That is the thing that sets up the whole movie. And the Gandhi comparisons start even there, because the grandson says, my grandfather always lived in this very dim kind of room. He did not like light entering at all. And immediately Abba says, well, Gandhi is exactly the opposite, because even when he slept, when Gandhiji slept, he slept with the light on. So immediately we get a contrast between Saket Ram and Gandhi. And the irony is that this Saket Ram, who will go on to assassinate Gandhi, or try to assassinate Gandhi, at least if only in his mind, he gets married into a family, a Vaishnavite family that worships Gandhi. So much so that during that, when he comes to see Vasundhara Das in that Purnapakra scene, the song she sings is Vaishnava Janato, which is one of Gandhi's favorite bhajans. Narsin Mehta's bhajan, which says, the Vaishnava, the true Vaishnava, is the person who understands other people's peer parai janere, who understands other people's pain and goes on and like that. That is the song she sings. And when during the wedding night, the book that he's reading is her book, which is the biography of Gandhi. And during when he tells her that Gandhi is surrounded on the flight, when he tells her that Gandhi is surrounded by people who keep nodding to whatever he says, like the three monkeys, she contradicts him and says, I am not like those monkeys, I am exactly this. So he's married into this family that worships Gandhi, and that's this great irony there that this man is facing. And finally, the Gandhi thing that we see a little bit is when that man comes, the person who works for the family comes to give a telegram to Kamal, and he won't enter the house because, he's considered an untouchable. And Kamal says, you come in because, my mama is not there, so nobody's going to mind, just come in and give me the telegram. And he comes in. So ironically, Kamal, though he thinks that he is against Gandhi's views, is actually for doing a lot of things that Gandhi is preaching and practicing. That is the way he treats Harijans and things like that. So the movie is filled with these Gandhisms, or rather these Kamalisms as well. Dr. CGS asks a lot of questions. I'm going to consider one. Post the violent death of Aparna, that is the Rani Mukerji character, right in front of his eyes, and eventual forced second marriage with Maithili, the sexuality of Saket Ram seems to be literally emasculated to a scene where he literally zips up when Maithili walks in, and post intoxication. During the song Isail Todangadama, there seems to be an outburst of rage and the parallel sexuality where he romances his gun, aka symbol of anger, and mixes sexuality with Maithili, whom he addresses like a child initially, and finally leave her to avenge Gandhi. The gun is a very classic, in Freudian terms, the gun is a phallic symbol. So it's literally a phallus, because it kind of penetrates. You shoot it and it penetrates a person. So it's a phallic symbol, and the fact that he's confusing the somras that the Atul Kulkarni character gives him during that gorgeous song, Isail Todangadam or Har Koi Samjhe, which is beautifully sung. I'm during that song, he gives him that somras, and in his intoxication he listens to that is one of the best directed stretches of, actually this film has two, it's full of this is a film where you notice the writing a lot at first, but then gradually as you watch it more, you notice how beautifully at least two of the greatest set pieces of Indian cinema are there in this movie for me. One is the stretch where Kamal goes to Maharashtra for the Dashera ceremony and is inducted by the Maharaja, and he kind of makes love to Maithili, and we get to the interval point where he kindly plays the piano. That is one thing, and I'll come back to the piano thing in a bit. And the second thing is when the Azad Soda Factory, notice that name again, Azad, which means freedom. Azad Soda Factory, Azadi is freedom, but Azad Soda Factory, that whole stretch where he goes with that pimp into that area, and the transformation occurs within that action set piece. So within that action set piece, you have two things happening, right? First, the Muslims are chasing a Hindu who is Saket Ram, and then the Hindu mob arrives, and now Shah Rukh becomes the victim. So now Saket Ram is in charge of saving the Muslim who is Shah Rukh Khan. So that again is wonderful, and notice how that whole Azad's set piece ends. It ends with Kamal is kneeling there, but then he kind of lowers his head to the floor in complete frustration, having understood how wrong he was because Shah Rukh has transformed him and his thought process, and that is the classic namaz pose which we see him in. And so he has kind of we know not just that it's in his head, but because we see him literally adopting the pose of a Muslim in prayer, the pose that just a little while ago Shah Rukh Khan also kind of was in when he was hiding from the people who were chasing him. So coming back to this question, something about this fact that he's being entrusted with this mission has kind of unemasculated him. And the atmosphere is also very sexually charged, because part of that whole segment, that wonderful sequence, is that gorgeous Lavani song. Lavani is again a kind of an erotic kind of thing. There's some Kamadev there, and he's a eunuch, and he kind of asking that woman to sing, and she's singing, and while she's singing, this whole thing transforms into a lovemaking scene where and Maithili goes and transforms into a gun and stuff like that. So he's unable to distinguish between his wife and his mission. And again, this goes back to the whole thing about hallucinations, because he is unable to kind of, what is fact, what is fiction is not told in this movie at all. Because if you look after this, it looks like he has finally gotten over Aparna. Because one of the key things in this movie, you see a kind of metti, the toe ring symbolism throughout in this movie. First of all, Aparna kind of like a marriage thing, she removes her toe ring and puts it on Saket Ram's hand. And then when Vasanta Attai's husband dies, we see Kamal glance at her toe rings. And then and Maithili gets married, we see a very, very explicit shot of, the toe ring being inserted into her toe. So that metti kind of is there throughout the movie. And at that point, in Maharashtra, Kamal takes off the toe ring that Rani Mukerji gave him as a wedding present, and puts it on Aparna's hands. And that's a classic transference of affection, because that woman is now, you are now my wife and you are my lover, and I'm going to love you. And he says, if I confess to you all the problems in me, will I feel better? And she says, yes, you tell me everything, and you will feel better. He's getting to that point where he almost falls for her. So it's not just some hallucination. It looks like, within the broader hallucination, this doesn't seem to be a smaller hallucination. We really seem to be, for one of the rare times in a film, actually having a character arc, as in he kind of finally makes love to his wife and he gets intimate with her, and now he's at a point where he's about to settle down into a regular relationship. And that's when the Raja comes out of the Sriram Abhyankar's hospital ward and says, okay, Sriram wants to speak to you. And then he's pulled back into his mission, and the intimacy that was happening gets cut off again. So again, the point that the tug of war between the wife and the mission is kind of represented in that wife transforming into that gun and stuff like that. And in that middle of that sequence, we also get this wonderful, like that touring, the metti thing, there is this wonderful piano thing as well throughout. Because if you notice throughout, the piano is used constantly as a kind of, I wouldn't call it a metaphor exactly, but a symbol. Because first when the song happens, right, Chahe Pandit Ho or Rama Ranalum, they're kind of having a play. For the piano is used very playfully, because they're fooling around with the piano, and the piano is used very playfully. The piano actually in this movie has a character arc, because when we get to Kolkata, the piano becomes it's used, Ni Partha Parve happens, and the piano is used in a very lustful, sensuous, romantic manner, right? Because she's like, it's one of the best images in the movie. She's down there, and we see her through his thighs, and he's on this piano, and it's like amazing. And then the piano becomes a symbol of aggression, because when after that, when those Muslim men attack Rani Mukerji, they tie Kamal to the piano again, and the piano slowly starts transforming again. It kind of becomes an object of fear or whatever. And after that, when Kamal tries to play the piano, he's only able to play a few notes. He's not able to play that fluid tune anymore. He's only able to play like one or two notes again. After making love to Maithili, he's just able to play a few kind of thing, and then he gives a very harsh chord, and then he gives up, and then that's the interval point. And before that, you see, if you remember, the piano actually falls down as they're trying to move the piano. When he's moving out of his home from Kolkata to Tamil Nadu, that piano falls down and crashes. So the piano again is used throughout as like a kind of a symbol. So that gets a character arc of its own. The inanimate objects in this movie probably get better character arcs, because they are more solid than the live people in this movie, who are all imagined through the lens of either a novelist or a hallucinating, weak-minded man, because both of them are completely unreliable. Aishwarya Murugan says, is the Maithili character any addition to Ram's character, or just a wife for the sake of the female lead? I don't think she's just a wife at all, because first of all, she's the calming point of his life. After that very, very horrible episode with Aparna, he needs a calming point in his life. He finds a Sita, Maithili, and he needs to kind of, get through the rest of his life. So she's that character. She's a person who comes in and says, I'm here, and, please, I want to help you. I understand you had this horrible experience and I want to help you. But where the Maithili character becomes like strange is that after Gandhi that episode happened, right? After Gandhi is shot by Nathuram Godse, that is when Sakit Ram basically went there not to kill Gandhi but to apologize to him and says, listen, I had all these horrible, wrong, misguided notions in my head, and now I want to forgive you. And Gandhi keeps saying, no, 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 we'll talk about this later because I have to rush to this meeting. And he goes and he gets shot, right? But if you look at it, Sakit Ram has already had a change of heart at the Azad Soda factory when he adopted that namaz position. So, why, after Gandhi dies, does he still stay in that dim room? And I'm presuming that he was not a good father at all because his son hates him, his grandson loves him, but his son kind of like whatever, he can't even be bothered by him. And assuming that's coming about because he didn't treat his wife and son very well. But why? I mean, like, why? The poison in him has been purged out, right? So why did he still continue to apparently not be this great husband or father? Was he so mentally messed up still? Did Gandhi's death mess him up? Again, I'm saying these are all things that a traditionally written movie would care to address because she would be the heroine of the film. But this movie kind of, instead of A, B, C, D, E, it just goes from A to E all the time. And we're just told these things, and it's almost like an outline for a novel that is being written by this grandson. I am Ashwath says Wagner's composition, the difference in the Sakit playing piano before the disaster and after being given the task of assassinating Gandhi. Music played a really great understanding into Sakit's mindset. What else did we miss that Kamal Ilayaraja worked together in the telling through the music? I think the best parts of music for me are when Kamal, in that Maharashtra set piece, he enters that Raja's secret chamber and that all the decisions to kill Gandhi are being made. And sometimes a music can really, really put you in a feeling, not like a situation, but like give you the sense of a feeling. And that there's a percussion there that's like tin 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 kind of percussion that's happening there, and it has a like a texture that, to me at least, it just sounds like hallucination. It just sounds like this already disturbed man has become even more disturbed by the somras that he's just had, and he has just decided to go in there. And I think the music is just the thing that guides us through this thought. But you know what I really don't understand about this music in the first place is that why did Kamal not go to Ilayaraja in the first place? It's a huge movie. It's such an ambitious film, and I granted that L. Vaidyanathan is a great musician and all that kind of stuff, but film music is very different from like classical or any other kind of music. So there's no guarantee that a person who does one thing well is going to do another thing well. For instance, I don't like the score that Pandit Ravi Shankar did for Pathir Panchali at all, because for me the movie is so light and delicate, and Ravi Shankar is amping up every moment with so much melodrama. I'm like, why? He's kind of transforming the texture by interpreting each the elements as something, and there's the flute going on, there's something else going on, there's star going on. It's too much, and Ray's film is so delicate and raw and lovely. I'm like, why would Kamal not go to, if not Ilayaraja and he wanted a change, then somebody else who's more film related, right? I don't understand that in the first place. Of course, what happened here is the stuff of legend, and we got two extraordinary songs in that Maharashtra stretch, which is this Isail Todangadama, which is brilliant beyond words. I mean, I just love that song. And then that Lavani song, which is again a brilliant song itself as a piece of folk music. And the way it segues into that Wagnerian section is just so brilliant. I mean, I just love those two songs there. That's just so amazing. Jakin Ejgar says, did you like the film after the first watch? This is his first proper movie as a director, not counting Chachi Charshabis. What was your opinion at that time about Kamal Haasan, the director, after watching his first directorial venture? I think I loved it at the first watch, but I think, you know what, Virumandi is a much better directed film. It's far cleaner, it's a much more sophisticated piece of film narration. But I think this, for a first film, is kind of extraordinarily written, and I think at least 75% of what Kamal did is amazing, because even today when I watch it, sometimes after 20 years, a film kind of dates in the sense that certain things become and especially if you know the film well, you know what's going to happen. So the film kind of becomes a little boring or dull, or certain portions become slower than you think they are. But this film, after a certain, like a little bit of a bumpy start, it really holds up. it just keeps escalating and escalating and escalating, and it just really, really holds up. And I think that's both Kamal the writer and Kamal the director, though not so much Kamal the actor, because I think the people who give the best performances in this film are Rani Mukerji. She's extraordinary. I don't think she's ever acted this well in any other film. Shah Rukh Khan, Wali, who's just brilliant, and Atul Kulkarni, who really fits that role. I mean, he's just so good in that role. And also Gandhi. Nasiruddin Shah I thought was brilliant as Gandhi, both in the Tamil version where he speaks English and in the Hindi version where he speaks Hindi. He is just so, he makes Gandhi this slightly eccentric, kind of playful, lovely character. Of course, the dialogues help, Kamal's dialogues help, but that's again a very, very good portrayal. I'm not saying Kamal isn't effective, he is, but I think, I don't know what it is, but I thought his acting in a movie like Virumandi is much more impressive than what it is here, for a number of reasons. Maybe because, like I said earlier, maybe because this is the character for whom we really don't have an arc. We see him like in chunks of the various events that are happening, and we don't get that through line for him. Maybe it's that or whatever it is, because he's very sincere, and I think the best portions of him in the film are in the two love portions. I love him in the scenes with Rani Mukherjee and in the scenes with Vasundhara Das, and I think both these are also extraordinarily well written portions. I mean, Rani Mukherjee is this spunky woman, and Vasundhara Das is this kind of childish, girlish figure, though she insists that she's not a girl and this is not a Bal Vivah. So she kind of really tells him that and kind of puts him in his place. One connection between that I really love is, I spoke about this, him offering that Metti ring to Vasundhara Das and kind of transferring his affection from Aparna to Maithili. But even before that, there's this beautiful scene. Again, it's the writing, right? Where they go for the Punna Pathifying, and Maithili falls at Kamal's feet, and he, takes his hand to bless her because she's at his feet, and he wants to bless her, and he sees the ring of Aparna still on his hand. And I think that's like, these are just gooseflesh moments for me, because they're so organic, right? Because that is what you would do when you're blessing someone, but then that ring happens to be there. So it's not like some artificial amped up moment. It's a very real and organic moment. Another fantastic moment is when the Raja, the horse kind of falls on Sriram Abhyankar, and it paralyzes him. It kind of paralyzes him below the neck, but the horse itself suffers. So he has to put the horse down. He has to shoot the horse. And this is, I'm telling you, I don't know how Kamal thought of this scene. It's so brilliant. I just get gooseflesh, because it is, the best scenes are the ones that just come out of nowhere. And what the Raja does is the small thing. Before shooting the horse, he orders his stable hands to blindfold all the other horses in the stable. And for some reason, I'm just so emotionally moved by that moment, because that act of mercy, not just to the horse that he's mercy killing because it cannot function anymore, but that act of mercy for these other creatures that will probably not even register that their friend or comrade horse is being shot, but he kind of says, close their eyes because I don't want them to see this. I'm like, wow, that's some kind of writing. You really know that a guy is out there when he's writing these kinds of scenes. And of course, there are these very obvious parallels, like the elephant, running amok in Kolkata, and the same elephant being a very tame elephant in a temple in Tamil Nadu and things like that. And finally, Naveen asked this question: what do you think would have been the impact reception of this film? It is released now with such politically sensitive subject. Wouldn't this have become the most controversial film ever released? Yes, I mean, you look at it today and it is so scary about Hindu lynch mobs and Muslims and all these other things that are being talked about in this film, about Gandhi, about, like today we're talking about Nehru in a certain way. And this film is so prescient in a way. It's so like it's almost like it's anticipating what has happened today, though it was more like the immediate response the film had was to Babri Masjid and things like that. But look where that has led us today. And I think this film would have been so controversial. I would not expect it to get a censor certificate, because in the Bombay chapter of my book Conversations with Maniratnam said one of the toughest things to do for that movie was kind of get censor certificate for very very small things, like a sheet with blood or something like that. There was like a sheet filled with blood, and because they wanted the scene cut off because it showed that the police were being depicted as inhuman. And that's one small thing, right? In this, what happens in Hera, my God, it's like, I mean, there are so many. Forget the violence and the sex, right? That's the other thing. But I'm talking about the way the Mahatma is treated, the words that the Raja and Shriram Abhankar used to talk about the Mahatma Gandhi. Today, people would just take offense, because we are a much more offense taking culture today. And I cannot imagine about 50% of this movie even passing by the censors, because almost everything would be taken out. So I think, even though maybe we can say things like the audience wasn't ready for it then, though I would really say that the audience is never going to be ready for a movie such as this. It's only going to be like praised by like few people who like cinema, and that's it. That's its destiny. It'll never find a large audience, because it's too dense and complicated a film, and it's not really an entertaining film. So I don't think this is really going to find much of an audience. But I think it's good that it came out when it did, because it, at least then, it could have been made exactly the way Kamal wanted it made. So this is one of his great achievements, and it's easily one of the crowning glories in a career filled with crowning glories. So 20 years of Hey Ram, congratulations Kamal Haasan and team. And this is the end of this Ask BR episode. See you in the next episode of Ask BR. Until then, keep watching Film Companion South.